welcome to my podcast. This is a podcast where I bring you inspirational stories on business and mindset to help you courageously and confidently achieve success beyond anything that you dream possible. I'm your host, Michelle Quay. I'm a visibility confidence coach and the founder of Elevate Life Coaching. Let's just say that I know a few things about overcoming seemingly impossible obstacles in life and in business. My goal is to get you out there in your world so that you can stop playing small. Welcome to the show. Launching a heart-centered coaching business is a long, winding road when you don't have the right tools and strategies to get you going. After spending thousands of dollars invested in your business, but so far you had zero client and you are doing a whole lot of pro bono work. If this sounds like you, my friend, I want to invite you to come and join me in the Visibility Confidence Mastermind. This is a community of women coaches who come together to grow their business with strategies on brand story, visibility, and content marketing. This is a safe place where you can find all the support that you need to confidently and courageously to build your visible brand and attract your soulmate clients into your world. I will show you an easier way to create visibility online and launch a heart-centered coaching business without feeling the overwhelm. And I'm also going to show you a better way of creating content that not only will give you the opportunity to stand out from your competitors, but also attracts the right clients to find you. How would you like to have all your discovery calls be filled with ready to sign up clients rather than wasting your time on the Humpty Dumpty who kept sitting on their walls? If you are ready to learn a simple way of boosting your business visibility, get your word out, and save time and money, come join me in our sisterhood at members.elevatelifecoaching.org/VC Mastermind. See you soon. I am so delighted to invite another great, amazing guest speaker, Shahara Wright, to join us about her legal knowledge. We're going to pick her brain about all the legal knowledge that she can bring for us. Shahara Wright is a CEO, business law attorney, and business strategist. She is an award-winning author and a highly sought-after international speaker. Shahara has been the owner of Lee and the lead attorney at the Wright firm. I love that name. Absolutely love that name. How clever it is to have a company and that name after your last name, the Wright firm. Over the last 20 years, she's been the CEO and she's also the founder of CEO Effect to work with small business owners and nonprofit leaders who want to implement a strategy in building capacity. So I don't want to take too much time. I know all of you are excited to have her here joining us. I'm pretty sure you have a lot of questions about the legal stuff, which a lot of time we don't talk about because we don't have the knowledge background. So today I'm delighted to invite Shahara to join us with her knowledge and expertise in business law. Hi, Shahara.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Thank you so much for joining us because I think this is a topic that is so relevant and important for especially new starting coaches and business owners to know about. And a lot of time we don't know the right resources to go to. And many of our audience, they don't have a big budget to work with. To hire with a lawyer. So we're constantly looking for information to make sure that we're getting things right. And whether it's creating contract or actually setting up an LLC or any type of trademark, anything that's related to our business. So I'm really happy that you're here today.
Well, I'm ready to talk about it. So let's do it.
Yeah. Before we dive into the legal stuff, can you just give us a little quick introduction about yourself? How did you become a lawyer?
So, yeah, I decided to be a lawyer at the tender age of 8. And so I really, my mom was like, oh, you like to argue, you should be a lawyer. And, I think that's what a lot of lawyers' parents tell them. And I really just kind of started looking into it, thinking about it, did some things in high school, worked with another lawyer, and it really just kind of fit me. So when I went to undergrad, I knew I wanted to go to law school, went to Texas Tech for University of Law, School of Law, and I went there. When I came out of law school, I really was looking for, a job, and I was applying everywhere and didn't get hired anywhere. I ended up working for two different solo practitioners doing family law and then some general practice. But I knew that I wanted to do business and nonprofit law. During law school, I took a class called Business Entities, really loved it, knew that it was something that I wanted to do. And then I worked for a nonprofit entity while I was in law school, and I really enjoyed being there. So I knew that this was something that I wanted to do. So when I couldn't really find a job, couldn't get anyone to hire me, I just decided that I would go out on my own. And I did that in January of 2000 and started my own law practice and just, worked to meet other business owners, nonprofit leaders, other attorneys. And I've been doing this for 22 years now. So I really love the work that I do working with small businesses and nonprofit organizations.
So I think one of the questions that a lot of startup business owners have is, what is it that I need and what do I need to know in terms of starting a business? What makes a business a business?
Well, I think a business is a business as soon as you start earning money, right? For either your services or your product, right? It's very simple. I think sometimes people overcomplicate it and give these kind of nuances, but a business is really when you are earning money for your services or your products. So you can go out, sell a widget, and sell a couple of widgets and you got a business, right? You can go out and sell a service and you got a business. I think really the question is, when do you sort of legitimize that business and make it more structured? And there's different ways to do that. But I think there's a lot of kind of ifs, ands, and buts. I always kind of go through this process, which is, one, is it a hobby? Is it just something that you're doing just to be doing because you don't have anything better to do, or you just enjoy it, like you maybe crochet hats, but you just do that on the side and, it's not really that big of a deal. Then, do you really need to go through setting up an LLC and all these kinds of things? Probably not, right? If you have a significant amount of assets, right? You have your $1 million home or $500,000 home or however many, things, or 401ks and other things like that, then you don't want your new business venture to affect those things, your personal business. So then you're going to want to separate that liability because you don't want that to affect your personal. And then lastly, I think, is the business that you have, does it have a lot of liability to it? So I use, an extreme example like a daycare or some, extreme sports thing where somebody's likely to get hurt, something's likely to happen, that you want to make sure that you have that separate liability. So those are the kind of questions that I ask about what is going on in your business and your life to determine, do we really need to have, a formation, a structure?
Mm-hmm. So from what I going through my own business and from what I understand is that whether or not having an LLC has to do with how much of the liability, how much of the things or asset that you want to protect from your personal space, right?
I think that's part of that. Yeah.
What about like having a contract? Because as coaches, we work close one-on-one with clients, and a lot of time we create these contracts that it's a coaching agreement between our relationship to the client. But how much of that I have to worry about, and whether or not I need to get it reviewed by a contract lawyer, perhaps? What's the concern behind that?
Yeah, well, obviously I'm a big proponent of contracts. And so I definitely think that you need a contract. And I believe that, at the very minimum, you need something in writing, right? Written contracts, right? That tell you what to expect. What are my expectations as a client? What am I getting? What are your expectations as a coach? What are you going to do? I think these things are important to lay out. And so what I like to tell people is that you have to think about it in terms of somebody that doesn't have anything to do with the agreement. If they're looking at it, do they understand what's supposed to happen? And so when you don't have anything in writing, there's a lot of assumptions that get made that probably would have gone away had you had something in writing. So I definitely believe that a contract is important. Even if it's something that you're doing month to month, a lot of times coaches will tell me, well, if they don't want to do it, then, they don't have to. And I understand that, but you still have to have some expectations, because as a client, and I'll just take myself, everybody's had some, bad experience with a coach for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. A lot of that bad experience has to do with expectation, and they're not getting what they thought that they were going to get. And so when you lay that out in writing, it makes it much better.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of, let's say I can't really afford to work with a lawyer, are there any resources that you might be able to direct like coaches to look at in terms of using the language? Because not every one of us use like jargon like client and coach, and this agreement is between the two parties, and it gets really complicated and really professional in detail in terms of the language that people use around contract. Do you have any resources on that?
Sure. So I'm glad you asked. So I have a new shop that's opening up soon called Contracts Done Right. My last name, Wright. It helps to have a catchy last name that you can, throw in there whenever you need to do it. So Contracts Done Right, we have, template forms that have information in there that you can utilize for your business. And to further answer your question, I don't really think some contracts are complicated, but contracts are not complicated in nature, right? Sometimes they can be very complicated when you have complicated transactions, but truth is that they're usually very simple, and when worded correctly and clearly, they're very easy to understand. A lot of people say they're scared of contracts. They don't want people to be confused, and they want them to sound friendly. And that's fine. But I think when you understand the words that are in your own contract and you can explain those words to your client, that it's not confusing. I think when it gets confusing is when you pull stuff from the internet or you pull stuff from other places, you don't even understand your own contract, and therefore you can't explain it to your client. And so everybody's confused and lost. And so I think that's important. So you want to have clearly written contracts where they can be utilized and explained for you and your client so that you can make it easy to use.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything? So I have my contract. I know what I'm selling. I know what I'm providing. What would be my next step in terms of business legal that I need to know and that I might not have thought about?
Well, I definitely, if you're selling things on a website, whether it's services or products, you definitely want to have your policies on there, your website policies, terms of use, privacy policy, those kinds of things you definitely want to have on there. Especially with privacy policies, usually when you're using third-party apps like, Facebook or, even like we are StreamYard or a lot of other services, PayPal, those kinds of things, they require you to have privacy policies. So again, you want to make sure that you have it. You want to make sure that you understand your own privacy policy. So don't just pull it off and then throw it up and not even read it or know what's in there, right? You need to know what's there. So because you have to adhere to your own privacy policy. So these are things that are very important for you to have on your website. I think the next thing is also having a good process about how you do things, how you work with your clients in terms of, expectations, communication, when things are supposed to be done, when you need things to be done. And if they're not done, what happens, those kinds of things. Those things are in contracts sometimes, but sometimes it's just a policy that you have that's not necessarily reflected in a contract. So you want to have that, because what will happen, and what I see happen a lot of times, is that the things that go wrong really have to do with the management process of a business, meaning that kind of back end stuff that gets left off and nobody pays attention to, and you forget this email, or you forgot to communicate this, or somebody asked for a refund and they didn't understand the refund policy, or, those kinds of things you need to be able to have and kind of flesh through. So those are some of the things I think are that next step that aren't necessarily legal in terms of, you need a lawyer to do that, but it does affect the legal standing of your company. And when things go wrong, you have a process and a policy in place.
So at what point, I'm glad you brought it up, because, a lot of these things that people pulled it off from the internet. And I know there's something called termly, where you can set up your privacy act, you can set up the policy. And so how accurate are those resources in terms of like the step you pull?
Well, I'm not familiar with that one. I can just say that the ones we do, we really try to consider what needs to go in a privacy policy or terms policy, and then give you the option and the ability to make sure that you have the proper information in there. Privacy laws, specifically in the United States, are kind of all over the place. There's several different ones. There are federal ones, there's state ones, and so it can be very tricky. And so when you know that, especially when you have an internet-based business, that you're working, in all 50 states, that you have to really make sure that your privacy policy adheres to whatever all the states. So you take the strictest policy. If you are doing business, out of the country, and you're, working with people, outside of the US, you have to adhere to those privacy policies as well. So it's really important to understand, number one, where you do business, and who you do business with. And then two, again, making sure that your privacy policy has the things that are required for the places where you're doing business. And so when we, with our privacy policies and website policies in terms of use, we take all of that in consideration. And then we have specific places about, hey, you need to add this, you need to add that, specific to your particular needs, so that it can be clear about what's happening.
I love how it's very tailored down to, because we have 50 states, and some of the states are more strict and other states are more lenient. So it really depends on where you work. How long do we keep these documentations?
So for privacy policies and website policies and things like that, you should be updating those yearly. At the very least, yearly. I mean, honestly, you should be doing it every year. So every year should be looking at, it may not change that much, but you definitely need to look at it in terms of how you're doing business, what's actually happening, the third party sites and apps and stuff that you're using. You definitely should have that. In terms of your contracts with your clients, I think that depends. If the contract is working for you and it has most of the terms that you need, then you probably won't have to amend that. Maybe every couple of years you might want to look at it. But if you're finding that there's a lot of information missing, or it's no longer working for you, then you definitely want to have that change. And I think it's just important to understand that as you grow, as your business grows, your needs change. Obviously, the type of client that you're working with change, and the type of work that you're doing change. So naturally, the contract is going to change as well. I have lots of times where clients will have done their own contract or use a form, but then realize that, they've kind of outgrown it, and now they need a more customized contract, which obviously is going to be much more significantly expensive. But there's just comes a point in time where forms don't work for you anymore, and you definitely have to work on getting a customized contract that works for how your business moves.
Mm-hmm. Got it. I think one of the questions that came from the audience, so they had submitted ahead of time, and one of the question came up because some of us, like for example, I'm still practicing as a clinical pharmacist, so I still have my professional license, and I know there's an audience where people are practicing, they have dual role. And so I think one of my clients, actually, she's a certified board certified medical physician. Mm-hmm. And so then she's opening up her own coaching practice. Are there any special consideration in terms of protecting your own professional licensing?
Oh, yeah, that's such a great question, Michelle, because I think that's really important, especially for licensed professionals, to be clear about what services are the benefit of your license and what aren't, right? I mean, if I'm doing coaching, I'm an attorney. I can't necessarily stop being an attorney just because I'm coaching somebody, and I'm just using this weird example of book sales, right? Like, so I'm obviously, I have a legal knowledge that I can't turn off, but that is different from providing the services. And I think that when you have something where somebody knows that you do this specific work, that you have to make sure that they understand you are not paying for these services. I am not giving you medical advice, or, if a clinician or something like that, that this is not happening, and have a place where people have to check off and say they understand that. Right. So I think that that's important, especially for those of us who are in licensed professions, that is a clear understanding that people know this is what you're getting and you're not getting this, and make sure that they, check off specifically that they know that that's not happening. That's important, number one, for your insurance, purposes, and number two, for your clients to understand what is and what isn't expected with the work that you're doing.
I think that's that's a great answer. And I'm really glad I asked. And I also, because I remember when I first started out, I was still working as a clinical pharmacist, and I wasn't sure if how much of that am I bringing into my coaching practice, because I had people reaching out to me and wanted to have medical advice, and that's just something that's odd to me, because I'm not advertising myself as a life coach. Which brings me to another question, which is, how much of my own liability, or what is the liability insurance? How does that come into play when I establish my own business?
So, liability insurance varies greatly, right? There's so many different types and so many nuances in there that you definitely want to start off at least with general liability insurance. General liability, really, if you have an office, somebody slips and falls, something like that, it covers a lot of that kind of stuff. If you have professional services, you have what we call errors and omissions, E&O insurance, that will cover, and again, using just kind of like wild examples, you're a coach, you're a health coach, and somebody's health declines while you're supposed to be coaching them, to be more healthy. And they sue you for malpractice. That error and omissions, insurance will cover those kinds of things. And malpractice insurance, just depending on the industry, what you're in, what it'll be called. So those are some important things. If you have physical products, sometimes your liability insurance will cover some of that. Sometimes you'll need a separate insurance to cover like inventory and things like that. So you're really important to work with a knowledgeable insurance agent to understand your business and what you have and what needs to be protected. I think that the biggest thing right now is really having cyber insurance. Especially for those, that are, doing a lot of their business on the web, because their chances of you being hacked, chances of their things going wrong are really high. And the assumption that because you're small, that nobody cares is really a bad assumption, because you're small and you may not have as many, firewalls up and as many protections is exactly why hackers will go after you, because they have the ability to do what's easy for them to do. And it doesn't necessarily come straight through you. It could come through, another company, a third party app, those kinds of things. So you definitely, want to think about having cyber insurance to protect your information, things like that. So those are just some types of insurance that you might want to think about.
It sounds like there's so many things I need to consider in getting started a business. It's almost feeling like really overwhelmed. So what are, when people reach out to you, and you're taking them on as a client, walk us through the process of how you onboard the clients, and what do you do for them?
Yeah, so a majority of my clients have been in business, so they're not new, and they've been in business for some time. And really what we're talking about is where they are now and what they're wanting to do, and where they're going. So, everybody comes in with a specific need. So let's just say, I'm, again, just throwing out something, they need a trademark and they're having some issue with wanting to protect their name. So, okay, we go through that and we deal with that. But then I'm also trying to find out what's actually happening in the business. What are the things that we need to consider in order to look at your business as a whole? Because I act as general counsel for small businesses. And so really what that means is I'm their legal department. And so we have to look at more than like what's just happening. We kind of have to look at the whole business. Do we have a CPA involved? Do we have financial advisors? Do we have insurance agents? All of those kinds of things are my responsibility to look and see that we have those things, to kind of take that overwhelm away from my clients and be like, oh my God, gosh, all these things, that we kind of push these partial them out and say, hey, okay, step one is making sure we have the structure together. Step two is making sure we have the financials together. Step three is making sure we have the insurance. And not all of those things are going to happen all at once. It may take a while, but you need somebody that's focused and understands that these things need to happen over time, to ensure that they're in place. Making sure that we have the right contracts, that the contracts that we have work for us. If contracts, if you have a lot of contracts, vendors that you're working with, that we ensure that, we're keeping up with when the contracts end, what is required in them, those kinds of things. That all comes with, having general counsel for your business and ensuring that stuff is, in line.
What I'm hearing is like having a team, having a team of people to be able to, really go into and ask for help when needed.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like, as your business grows, right? There's just a difference, right? From being that 0 to 100,000 to being 100,000 to 500,000 to 500,000 to $1 million. Like, as your business grows, it's going to need more things. And so obviously being able to manage all those things by yourself becomes almost impossible. The more money and systems that you have to have somebody in place. And so having, a team of people really makes a difference. And then a team that's invested in the survival of, your business. That's really how I look at it. My job is to ensure that the business survives. So it doesn't help me. It doesn't help anybody if the business doesn't survive. So these are the things that we have to do to ensure that the business survives. And that's really how you need to look at as you're building your team.
Yeah, I think I might need to reach out to you.
I'm here.
I wanted to ask for those, because thinking back 3 years ago, I would have never been able to afford a lawyer or to even have someone to help me to look at the contract, looking at the insurance, looking at the finance aspect. So I want to be able to ask questions in terms of for those people who are really, really struggling with just getting their business started. What would be their number one step? Or maybe number two, one or two.
Yeah. Well, I think, you may not be able to afford an attorney to hire, to draft, and to do all those things, but I think you can afford a consult, right? Like, I believe that you can probably expend a couple of $100 and, just depending upon, the attorney that you're hiring to spend the money to do a 1-hour consultation and get an understanding of what things that you need to be considering. That would at least put you in a good direction, to be able to know, hey, I need to think about these things. Even if you can't implement them all at one time, at least you have an idea about what can happen. So I think that any business owner should be able to at least afford that. Obviously, I am a big proponent of having CPAs, as a part of the team. I personally just like licensed professionals. Not all CPAs, have, bookkeeping and accounting and stuff like that in their office. So you definitely have to find one that works. But I just personally, prefer that as opposed to bookkeepers who don't have a licensed professional that they're connected to. It's something about having that license that makes people act right, with the fear of, of losing it. So that's my preference, but you definitely can have, a bookkeeping team and things like that. You want to make sure your books, are correct. And so you want to make sure you have that. And then I think really the next part of that, obviously, is just having someone to help you navigate those processes, in terms of hiring and those kinds of things. And sometimes that's, your attorney. Sometimes you may have a HR professional or somebody that you utilize to kind of help you through that growth process. So, I don't think that there's like this one big thing, because I think it all kind of depends. I kind of a come as you are kind of person. So, depending upon where you are and where your knowledge base is really where we start. But I think you have to just kind of have those conversations. And then if you really can't afford, any of these things, going to places like SCORE, Small Business Development Center, maybe some other resource, that's in your city or town that have free or very low cost, places where you can take classes and learn. I think that's important. I've taken advantage of that myself, and just always take up opportunities to kind of learn more about the operations of your business. Don't ignore the operations.
Yeah, I think, because we as coaches, a lot of time we come into the profession, we are all about helping others. We just wanted to get out there and start working with people. And we forget that there's operational or system aspects of creating a business that really need to be considered, including, setting up whether or not you need to set up a liability to purchase insurance, to have CPA on your team. All these little things you start to learning and finding out later in the line. And hopefully we find out early enough before things happen, right?
Yeah, I mean, you definitely, it's hard. It's a balancing act, right? Like even I struggle. I'm not alone, right? Like I don't always follow my own advice. So I mean, I think for everybody, it's a struggle about timing and when things happen and what you need to have and all that kind of stuff. So for everybody, I think that struggle exists. And there's no right answer, I think, or no always. At least that's not something that I believe. But I think that when it's time, and you shouldn't wait until your house is on fire, right? And before you ensure that you have somebody there, to come and help you, get to that point. So I think when you start feeling like, hey, it's time I need to have a lawyer, or maybe I need to talk to somebody, or at least, go know where to go if something comes up, then I need to be there. And also, do I need to look at my business and see if I need to have some people in place? Because a lot of times by the time you think you need one, you needed them, probably years before you actually kind of felt that need.
Yeah, like I think one of the first things that I went after was a trademark lawyer. I remember reaching out to a trademark lawyer because I'm creating a brand, and behind that brand there's a trademark, and I don't want people to use my name. Right. So that was the first thing that came to my mind. I need to get a trademark lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a lot of times where it starts, right? It's something that you feel like I need a lawyer for. And so you start there, and that's okay. I think that's pretty much how 90% of my clients come to me, right? I need a contract, or I had this problem, or I need a trademark, or I'm doing this deal, or something's going on where they, realize. But as we talk, we realize that there's more than just the trademark issue, right? There's other things that you might need to be considering as well. And so that's where the conversation comes to say, hey, it's more than just this. There's other stuff that I have going on. A lot of times, when my clients come in, they'll say, well, I don't think I have a lot of stuff. And then, 2 years later, I'm still here. And there's a lot of stuff because they're doing more than they thought, or they didn't realize, hey, I could just hand this over to Shahara and I don't have to worry about it. And so, now they're just like, hey, can you handle this? Can you take care of this? And that's one of the things that is going on. So I think, probably for a lot of businesses, if you're less than $250,000, you probably don't need a full-time, attorney, but you should, have a small budget to be able to, have a consultation, every once in a while, have some money aside for when you want to trademark your marks, your brand or things like that. There should be some money aside for that. As you, grow, you definitely are going to need more legal counsel, even if you don't have things every day, but to have somebody there that, that you need. A lot of times you're reviewing contracts and, not needing contracts drafted every day, but you're doing more deals, partnerships, joint ventures, those kinds of things where you're going to need, counsel to help you through those things. So you'll see that as your business grows, there's a lot more stuff that you could be handing off to your attorney, as opposed to you trying to navigate through all of that and dropping balls and things not going quite the way you want them to.
Yeah. And I really think it's important, especially dealing with the legal stuff, because you don't want to put yourself at risk, and just setting up the business right. And so that you have a system that actually safeguard and protect your own asset. And, ultimately business is an asset. So
yes. Yeah. It should be an asset, not a liability for you. Yes.
No. Where can people find you, Shahara?
Well, the best place to find me, social media, you can go to Facebook at thewrightlawyer.com, and that's TheWrightLawyer. So you can go Facebook. On LinkedIn, I'm at The Right Lawyer as well. On Instagram, it's The Real Right Lawyer. And of course, you can go to my website, thewrightlawyer.com, and all of those places are the best way to contact me and communicate.
Yay! I'm so glad I was able to catch you, grab you, coming to here. Hopefully this is going to help, some of our friends in the audience who are starting out their business and they really need some guidance. So hopefully would be a great resource that people will consider and go to. And give you some question, put you to work.
Yes, definitely. Well, if you guys have any questions, you can always reach out to me. But I think, the most important thing is that you just think about, a lot of aspects of your business. It can be overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. If you kind of take them in pieces and really kind of just understand that where you need to start and kind of move yourself into those places, it isn't as daunting as it seems.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming to the show. I really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah, same here. All right, I'll put you to the backstage so I can wrap up, and I will see you soon.
Bye.
Hey, beautiful. Thanks for listening. Ever feel like you are out in the battle by yourself in this world? I know I did. If you found values from this podcast and you are a woman coach who is ready to launch your coaching career and looking for strategies to get seen, get heard, and get hired, I want to invite you to check out additional resources in launching your coaching business by visiting my website at elevatelifecoaching.org. This show is made possible by listeners like you. I would love for you to support me by subscribing to the podcast on your favorite platform. And don't forget to give me a thumbs up and a heartfelt review. See you at my next tea party. Bye now.